Hello and welcome to Whose Race Are You Running? I'm Rajiv, this is Sia, and we are here to talk about you.
I'm very interested in talking about what you were mentioning before we started recording, and you were saying that we have a concept where we have a narrative of ourselves that gets formed very early in our lives, which forms the way we act, behave, react to pretty much everything in our lives, all lives long. You were talking about core beliefs. What are core beliefs?
Core beliefs are these beliefs, extremely strong beliefs that we have about ourselves and about the world in general. Yeah, these are usually formed in our childhood. These views tend to be quite rigid and inflexible, and they're not accurate. They're not evidence based, and they're based on the messages we hear about ourselves as children. They're quite rigid. It's very difficult to change a core belief to other, and that's the word, right? Core belief, core, it's at the core of your system. Changing them requires a lot of self awareness, work on yourself, essentially. So, if you were to say, well, what is a core belief? It's things like about ourselves, things like, oh, I'm stupid, or I'm just not good enough, or no one in the world can be trusted. The only person I can trust is myself because I will always be let down. These are not things that we are telling ourselves daily. These are things we believe about ourselves and about the world around us unconsciously. And because you have these unconscious core beliefs, you don't even realize that you behave in certain ways that reinforce these core beliefs. Right? So, if, for example, you believe deep down that you are essentially, stupid, yeah, all your actions will almost reinforce that. So, you will do things and then you will attribute anything that goes wrong, even the smallest thing, to the fact that you are stupid, even if it has nothing to do with it. You constantly reinforce that core belief.
So it's not that you start acting stupid or
You
whatever your
also
core belief.
start, no, you don't act stupid.
You
But like,
just
okay, let's
attribute
say
it to being stupid or to feeling that you're
that's right.
stupid and that's why you did it. So it's more attribution than behavior.
However, in a situation where, for example, you say you have the core belief that, um, you know, I am unlovable and I can never make friends. I'm unable to make friends. Nobody likes me. You go into a social setting with your walls up, right? Because you are beliefs. Now, let's come back to that whole threat thing. Interestingly, in this situation, right, you are going into a social setting with the core belief that nobody likes me, I'm unlovable, all that. Everybody there, this is all very unconscious. Nobody's actually planning this, but everybody there seems to be a threat to you. It is then very difficult for those people to get to know you, to see you for who you are, etc. And so then they may not get close to you, which then reinforces your belief that actually nobody likes me.
Will the
You see, it's a
reverse
cycle in this situation.
So it's almost like a self goal.
That's right. You're constantly reinforcing that belief. Your behavior is based on that belief
Wow.
in this particular situation.
And the reverse will also work, where then if you do land up making friends, you're like, how did that happen? You'll start
Yeah, you can. If
questioning.
you do land up making friends, you'll be like. In fact, I have clients who. I had a client who would keep coming and saying, "I don't know how to talk to people. There's something wrong with me. Basically, no one likes me." And then I have to point out. So she would then said, "But you went and met a friend recently. You had, yeah, but she only met me because of this reason."
So they
But
rationalize it.
Rush, there you go. She only met me because, really, is that why she only met you? There is obviously something about you that she likes, which is why she's hanging out with you. Then there is the other thing of I am less than. So what do? They overcompensate. You can see people who overdo work or overdo go way above and beyond what is expected or required, because in their mind that nothing is going to be enough.
Perfection, perfect.
Perfectionist,
And where does that come from?
right?
Does it come from, let's say, during their early years or growing
Yeah,
years, they were made
probably.
to
Yeah.
feel that whatever they have delivered, they could, maybe do a little bit more and a little bit more.
Yeah, it's, early years messaging. No matter what I do, there will be, there is always something more I can do to make this particular thing better. So you keep doing it.
Is
In the families and the homes that we grow up, the language that is used for us by our primary caregivers, parents, grandparents, all that, um, becomes our view of ourselves. If you grow up in a household where you are constantly being told that, I don't know, you're stupid, or this, your brother is so smart, why aren't you studying more? Or, you know, your cousin is so beautiful, she's fair and beautiful, will you ever find a husband?
Shazia, the examples which you are stating, they actually a very common stay, right? Because I mean, as growing up and not necessarily by malintent, but it may probably be because of lack of awareness,
Yeah,
comparisons with, either a sibling or comparisons with your neighbor or, a classmate,
anyone.
um, are very, very common. And while it may be for the primary caregiver, the outlook might be maybe by saying this will help you improve. It may actually be working reverse by being read or interpreted as putting that person down, and especially at a very nubile
Young.
age, at a very young age, and
Yeah.
would have a far more detrimental impact and reverse of what you would actually want to. And
100%. Even if even we even school bullying. Sometimes you think, oh, it's just ragging. We use that term. What's the big deal? I have clients who are still living in this sort of narrative of uh, I am not good enough and I am not worthy and nobody will like me, because in school they were bullied and were called fat or too dark. It impacts, we just don't realize the impact of these words that children hear on us as adults. We don't realize it. And I'll be honest, I had no clue until I started this work that those words could sit with you forever. It becomes part of your unconscious narrative. But it's interesting because as I work with adults, and then when I ask, I say, what language do you use for yourself? What words are you hearing about yourself? 9 out of 10 times, it's the same words that were used by their parents when they were children.
just
They are here
underlines
in their head, they are hearing, or their caregivers, whoever, they are hearing that voice telling them the same information about themselves.
So it just underlines how sensitive you need to be when you are having a conversation, especially at an impressionable age,
Yeah.
of the kind of words that you're using, the language that is being used to either get confidence out of that person, or rather put them down for what you might be viewing as a failure.
Yeah. And it's words, yes, but it's also non-verbal gestures. You hugging your kids. What
Wow.
physical gestures are you showing, displaying? What messages are your children getting from you, that they are loved no matter what, that you value them, that you, whatever, however they look, whatever their skin color, it's not relevant. I have a client who was constantly told when she was growing up that, her cousin who was fairer was much prettier.
this
Oh,
I
God,
have this I will completely relate to, because I don't know whether I was told or not told as much, but just generally, I guess, as I grew up and experienced the world around me, coming from, India and being in India, where at least in the 1990s when I was growing up, being fair skinned was a thing.
No, even if you're not told, if you just switch on the television set and watch 20 times of a fairness cream,
Yeah.
an ad which displays why is it important for you to be fair or please be fair, just
I had
use
this
us,
problem. I had
it
this
will
problem.
get imbibed.
I had this for a really long time. I didn't know it, of course. I went to therapy and still go to therapy. So I am slowly unpacking some of these things, but it was made aware to me over a lot of sessions that my entire narrative of like my core belief was largely negative. That feeling of not being enough
Good enough.
or not
Yeah.
being seen or not being worthy of being seen actually would be the more right thing to say. But a lot of it also had to do with skin color, which I did not realize. I probably was underconfident and I would walk into a room pretty much knowing everything. But if there were, people much, much fairer than me, then I would find myself in a shell automatically for no other reason. And I didn't know that it was a very apparent part of my core narrative.
And what helped you break the mold?
Awareness, but I have to admit that it was very difficult even accepting it to begin with. To
Mm.
even, I mean, I take therapy. I've been taking therapy for years now, but it's something that is so delicate because, I believe that I am a aware person and things like skin color and all does not bother me, affect me and things like that. But so when somebody tells me that um, you know, there may be a problem of underconfidence over there because of your own skin color, I almost immediately denied it in the beginning. And I said, what nonsense. This is not the kind of person I am. And these are not things that, I look at or think about. But over many, many, many sessions, when it was made clear to me that this is very, very, very deep down in the unconscious, in layers that, you don't have salient access to until you really work on it, made aware to me, then I kind of understood what was going on. And obviously, awareness helped first. I believe I'm quite a self aware person, but I wouldn't have reached there on my own. That would definitely need like a little bit of clinical help. I'm
Yeah.
assuming you get a
Yes,
lot of
actually,
that.
that's a great example of somebody using a defense mechanism, denial,
Exactly. I just
of
was going to point that out myself. You use denial, right, to hide this deep seated insecurity that existed about the tone of your skin.
and thankfully, I mean, she was working with a therapist, and that therapist helped you understand that and unravel, unpackage it for you to break that mold.
That's one example. It's a big example. I mean, there's even, for example, if a parent or a primary caregiver, whatever, is neglectful, never around for their child. Could be for a number of reasons, workaholics, alcoholic, abusive, where the child is getting the message growing up thinking that they are not lovable. If, with the thought in mind, if my own parent can't love me, then no one can. Why would anybody else love me if my own parent can't love me? And you grow up with that at the back of your head, and it impacts how you see yourself. It impacts how you are in relationships, both friendship relationships and, family, but also romantic relationships. It impacts what we call the attachment style, which is a whole separate topic at some point. Uh, and it impacts how you view the world. And all this is unconscious. You don't even realize that's happening until you start digging deep and all that.
It almost makes me wonder the points that you're making, Shazia, that even if there would be a minuscule level of awareness of these subjects and topics, it would make a world of difference to parents and children. Because a lot of times you observe this, you experience this, and a lot of times my conclusions been that it's not as if the primary caregiver has ill intent of any kind. It's that they are not aware, that they're not being sensitive to the kind of words that they're using and what impact those words are having on the child or with other loved ones, for them to carry that kind of notion all their lives and impact it adversely.
Yeah, I want to caveat this by saying that, sometimes as parents, we don't get it right always. Me as well. And I mean, I'm not all of us. And sometimes we do lose our cool with our kids, and sometimes we do say things that may not be the most appropriate. It's the fact that if it's consistent, that's when there's a problem. Occasionally we all lose our cool with our kids. They drive us mad. We know we all do it. But none of us are perfect parents. It's just being aware that, and if it's done on a consistent basis, then we need to examine ourselves. I'll give you another example. There are so many moms in this world who have severe postnatal depression. Yeah, they are unwell. And when they are in that state, they are not able to provide their children and their babies with all the unconditional love and all that. Now, this is not a choice by these parents. They are unwell. But sadly, it impacts the children. So often, when we've talked about this with my clients, I make it quite clear this is not about blame. This is not about saying, oh, my mom did this or my dad did this. This is about just understanding why we are feeling like this, about understanding ourselves. We don't want to go back and say, oh, but parents do the best they can. So sometimes they mess up. Many times we mess up. But we're trying. But the idea is to understand rather than blame.
And do core beliefs evolve as you grow, or are they like constant, like once formed, then they kind of stay?
They usually stay, but over time, with a lot of work, with constantly providing evidence that actually that is not true, they can change and evolve, but it involves a lot of work. Sometimes, sometimes a lot of people, I say, okay, here's the evidence. And like, yeah, okay, you say that, but I don't feel it.
And
Rationally, I know.
at what age group usually do these core beliefs get formed in an individual?
Really young, it's like 4, 5, whatever,
Wow.
early years.
And
Really young.
unless worked upon, they usually stay with you forever. Would it? Would it be right to say
No,
that?
I can't answer that. I don't know, to be perfectly honest. But they stay. Yeah. You might notice people in their 70s and 80s also having these core beliefs, which you think, oh, but now they're older and wiser, they should know. But no, they still function from that point of view.
Wow.
What? In our world, we see a lot of people, what will people say? They think to themselves, we can't say this. What will the world think of us? It's based on the insecurities.
So if we are to look at ourselves in that regard, I think I can slightly generalize this. I'm not saying it's across the world, but we as Indians are very goal oriented or structure oriented in terms of our parents were in the same cycle of good education to good marks to good job and marriage
Right.
and children and
We are a tribal community, no question.
yeah, so isn't it somewhat predominant that then therefore our core beliefs get formed around materialistic success in that sense?
There's a much wider context to this. I don't want to use the word materialistic success, but in the Indian context, it's about social, not only social excellence, but social climbing up the social, um, socio-economic sort of bettering yourself financially. It's not material. It's not about being able to buy this, that, and the other. It's about giving the next generation a better life. There's a much wider picture that one has to also look at. And if you see amongst our Indian context, we give a lot of weightage to something like education because it allows the next generation to step up that ladder. Sometimes we make a big joke of it also. Oh, all the Asians, you are becoming doctors and engineers and lawyers and whatever. We make a joke of it. But if you go back, why is that? Because those gave us the opportunity to have a better life than the previous generation did. There are generations in the UK who came, Asians, who came and opened up these convenience stores. But they put their children through to education, and that next generation now are lawyers and engineers and accountants and whatever. Financially, they've gone up that ladder. Which is so, digressing from the whole mental aspect, the social aspect, we have to also understand it plays a role in why we put so much emphasis on education. The problem that comes in is when it becomes so intense that it puts so much pressure on the fact that the academic achievement is then become the identity of a person. And if you don't achieve that academically, you are not good enough. And then that causes all sorts of other mental health problems, pressure, blah, 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 blah. So there's a social, bigger macro and a micro thing that has to be looked at when we're talking to people in therapy or whatever.
And Shazia, how do you break this loop?
Each generation breaks it. So that, with for example, in my home, whilst education is important, it is not the be all and end all of life. Yeah. If they don't get A's and B's or whatever it is, it's not it's not the end of the world in my home. Right? So my kids hopefully are not growing up with that with that view that if I don't get A and B, I'm not good enough. Hopefully. We're trying our best. So each generation it can only come each generation wise. Right? When we realize what the impact of that kind of thinking is. Again, I don't want to knock it because it's, there was a reason why we had that sort of ingrained in us.
Can one identify their own core beliefs by themselves, or is it clinical?
It's hard. It's really hard.
So what are some of the questions people can ask that can at least perhaps start pointing in that direction?
What drives me? How do I, again, sitting with the emotion, what is the feeling I get in certain situations? When do I feel most contented and authentic?
Okay, so if I am to use that, how does one actually understand their own emotions? Because I also feel like, in observation of my own self, we don't exactly know what we're feeling. It's just a whole muddle of things.
Yeah, I mean, I use something called an emotion wheel with my clients.
What's that?
It's a wheel of emotions. It's like literally so many names of so many different emotions. And what happens is, it's when I ask them, how do you feel? They're like, I feel sad. Yeah, but within sad, there are many, many things about being sad. Something like the word fear. I'm scared. Yeah. Within fear, there is anxiety. There is insecurity. There is weakness. There is a fear of rejection. There is a fear of being threatened. There is a fear of feeling of being inferior. Within fear, there are so many things. Which one are you actually feeling? Even within sadness, there is lonely, vulnerable. I feel despair. I feel abandoned. I feel isolated. I feel ashamed. Within all those, there are sub. So when we are able to identify those, only then we can go back to say, why was I actually, is it sadness or is it loneliness that I'm actually feeling?
If you're feeling not so great, when you wake up in the morning and you're feeling not so great, perhaps it's worth spending 10-15 minutes with yourself to pinpoint down what exactly you're feeling, and that will help you actually move from it versus staying in that state of whatever you woke up
It could
like
be a
and then
start.
and just stay
Could be a
there.
start.
That's why there are things like, journaling is a really good way of identifying, because you're spending those few minutes reflecting on how you're feeling, what is going on within you emotionally. Um, Mindfulness, meditation, all these things where you turn your attention to the internal aspect of you rather than what is happening externally, because mostly we are external. We're focused on the external around us. Spending that time to look inside is what we all need to be doing more of.
Is there a way that you suggest specifically for journaling?
Uh, Everybody uses it differently. I like to start using with the words I feel. Today I feel. So we are going straight to the emotion. This, because this, whatever happened. Or literally, I felt triggered by this person's behavior. Then you can understand why that happened. Some people use journaling just to have a place to vomit out how the day has gone. But I would encourage people who are journaling to not just make it as today I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this, but to say, I felt this, I felt that. So we are focusing on the emotion rather than the actual actions of what happened. Go to the feeling.
So, what are some of the things that you tell your clients to do by themselves so that they can, live healthier lives every day?
Look after yourself physically in the sense of eating well, drinking lots of water, sleeping well. The other one is getting exercise. Get out, do exercise, get physical, walking. You don't have to run or anything, but get walking. Third one is learn something new. Learn new things. So learn to play the guitar, learn to play the piano. Basically, keep your mind active by learning something new. Fourth one is connect. Be part of the community, meet friends, talk to people, connect with people. And the fifth one is give back. There's always a really good feeling when we give something back to society, whatever. Do something nice for someone else, even something as small as take a cup of tea to your colleague at work. Just do something nice.
Okay, let
It's
me
a
put
really good
you.
feeling.
Let me put you in a hot spot. If there was one thing of these five that you had to say, like the one thing that you would that you would want the audience to take away from, from our conversation, what you would want them to do.
I can tell you one thing, but for each individual, there's something different that gives them the energy and that makes them feel better. For me, if I was to give it to you on a personal level, I would say it's connecting with people. That's what gives me the energy, what makes me feel positive. For someone else, it could be going to the gym. For someone else, it could be volunteering at the local school. Again, we're coming back to the self-awareness is what gives you, what makes you tick, essentially.
What are the first 5 questions that you ask your new clients?
First 5 questions,
The
that's a
first
lot.
2 questions that you ask your new clients.
I always ask my new clients, one is, of course, how are you feeling? And they're all like, what do you mean? How are you feeling? That's one question. The other question there are two more questions I always ask. One is, tell me 5 things you actually like about yourself. And I invariably stump people when I say that. Like, oh, I don't know. And the third one is, if I had a magic wand right now and I could change something in your life instantly, what would it be?
Rajiv, you want to answer that question?
I would go back to when I was 6 to 9 years old and change my core belief.
You can't go back. You can only go
But
forward.
I have a magic wand.
The magic wand only takes you forward. What would you change immediately?
We would extend this conversation. I had two key takeaways that I wanted to talk about. I think the one big takeaway that I had, Shazi, and thank you for the conversation today that helped me get here, is to connect more with people. And the reason what uh, got me that to be my first, let's say, takeaway from our conversation today was the fact that we all seem to be in survival mode at different points in time. The threats that we view today might be different from the prehistoric ages, but they're still threats that, or at least we perceive them as threats. And we deploy our defense mechanisms at different points in time for that. Nothing wrong with it, so long as you are aware of it and you can acknowledge it and you can regulate it. And for me, what appealed to me the most was that if you display consistent behavior or consistent forms of self defense mechanisms, then you need people around you to kind of, hey, let you know, tap you on the shoulder and say, listen, bro, I've been watching this over the last few days, few weeks. And that could be very helpful in your journey of self awareness. And the second was to be exceptionally sensitive in the kind of words that we would be using with our loved ones, especially in the early ages. I have three nieces, and they're all in the impressionable age. And how do I handle them and display unconditional love to them? While I may feel it all the time, but I may fail to employ or to display that it is unconditional love because of my own biases or because of the choice of words or actions that I may use. But now that I'm more aware of what havoc it can create by modifying or forming their core beliefs, which could be destructive to them for a really long time, if I'm able to be sensitive to that and deploy it in the right manner, I could actually be making a world of difference to them, which is what I really want to do. It's just that, Shazia, you've made at least me and Sia and our audience very self aware of this today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sajia. It was a lovely conversation. And how do people reach you, Shazia?
Through my website, www.circletreetherapy.com.
Shazia, we would really like to thank you for your time today, for demystifying such complex concepts for our audiences. I'm sure this will really help them lead a better everyday life. Thank you.
Keep waving your magic wand, yeah?
Thanks. Thank you very much for having me. It's been a real pleasure and honor. Thank you.
We really hope that this episode has helped you as much as it has helped us.
With a little bit of self awareness, with a little bit of understanding how we function in our daily lives, we will be able to make every hour of our everyday much better, lighter, and easier like it should be. We very strongly believe that that's how we should live, and that's why we're here.
I couldn't agree more with that.
Shazia Datoobhoy is an extremely experienced therapist. She takes online sessions as well as in person sessions, but that's in London. So if you're in London, you can go to her in person. The details to her website, her email address, everything is in the show note captions. Thank you so much for watching us, and hopefully, we will see you soon in the next episode.